Thanks so much, everyone, for taking the time here. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to our monthly coalition-wide meeting for the GovAI Coalition. This is the place for government to work together and support itself, along with our fantastic partners from industry, nonprofit, civil society, universities, to use AI for the public good. We've got a couple of things that we're really excited about to walk through today. But in the meantime, please say hi in the chat, introduce yourself, where you're coming from, what the weather's like today. I don't know how you spent the long weekend, whatever's on your mind. And we'll go through just some quick announcements. Then I'm going to pass it off to Angela and Quinn from Center for Democracy and Technology to talk through some of the recent developments that came out of the White House around AI. You might have remembered a memo and guidance that came out from the previous White House administration. The new administration has released their AI guidance, and it's important for us to make sure that we stay up to date on that. And then we'll go through our committee updates. A lot of great things moving across the coalition, so excited to have our committees report on that. So let's get started here. For those that are new or just getting into the coalition, we've got 6 different committees, 6 different areas where a lot of the magic happens here. From helping you adopt technology and learn how to educate your staff in readiness and adoption, governing data in our data governance committee, thinking about how we purchase technology and purchase AI in our procurement, how we manage our relationship, transparency, and responsibility with our industry partners in industry relations, how we actually apply and use the AI tools available to us in use cases, and how do we bring our community along for the ride when we do AI in the public sector in community engagement. There's so much that we do that is only made possible by the fantastic work across hundreds of volunteers from the public sector and beyond. And if you're looking for a place to start, we've got a starter guide. I think I'll rely on some of my team in the chat here if they can drop the link to that starter guide from the slide deck. But really, come in, listen to the committee meetings, see what's interesting. Thanks, Angela. If you have someone else from your team that's interested in joining or wants to join some of the committees, we've got a registration form. It's the same thing that you probably filled out. They can fill that out. That'll give them the calendar invites and show them how to register for committees. You can also find any of our invites on our Google Calendar. And we just updated it earlier today. So I'm going to just show you, if someone could drop a link to the Google Calendar in the chat. For those that are unfamiliar, we have our Google Calendar. You can go to any event, any meeting. It'll have the Zoom registration information for you to just go in right there, click on it. It'll take you to a registration page. Once you register, you'll get an email about the invite, and somewhere towards the bottom of that, you'll be able to actually add it to your calendar so you have the invite as well. I know we've been having some issues with that, but that's where you can get that information, and then we'll have you on the registration list for that Zoom meeting. So any updates or changes, it'll go right to your inbox. All right. Now with some of the logistics out of the way, exciting announcements. Our main newsletter is out. We've got new exciting insight from whether it be AI in the environment, responsible ethical usage of AI, the most recent developments we're seeing around the country and beyond that are applicable to folks in the public sector. We've got the link here. I think we can drop it in the chat. And And I believe Layla sent out the newsletter as well just yesterday. So that should be in your inbox. Additionally, we announced this last month, but the GovAI Summit, our tickets are live. The summit, this will be our second in-person convening, November 5th through 7th for our government folks, right here in San Jose in the convention center. We have the link to register for the tickets there. Excited to have people join us once again for what really was a transformative conference last year. So, yeah, I think I walked through these details. Just as you're thinking about planning for it, it is San Jose. Hotel block rates range for hotel ranges from 200 to 275. But all of those details and logistics out of the way, I want us to get to the meat of our conversation today. I'm going to pass it off to Angela, who is going to introduce our guest speaker today.
Awesome. Sorry. Thanks so much, Albert. And so we're really excited to have Quinn speak with us today about the new White House guidance on AI. And so Quinn is a senior policy analyst at the Center for Democracy Technology, established in 1994. CDT is one of the leading nonpartisan nonprofit organizations fighting to advance civil rights and civil liberties in the digital age. And Quinn has recently released CDT's analysis on the White House Office of Management and Budget's new AI memo and its implications for the country. Quinn is also an active member of the coalition and is currently working with our Readiness and Adoption Committee on AI education for policymakers. And we're super excited to have him here. Quinn, thank you so much for dropping the link to the article in the chat. So if you'd all like to get a more in-depth look, please go ahead and take a look at that. We'll probably have time for 1 to 2 audience questions. So if you have questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat as well. But Quinn, so great to have you here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to chat about this. The link I dropped, I'll drop some links throughout of stuff I referenced, but the main link that I just put in has everything in one place. So if you're trying to find everything at the end, that's the best place for folks to reference.
Awesome. All right. So just going into our questions. So first, for those new, what federal AI guidance came before this most recent memo?
Sure. So basically, the new guidance that came out is our updated versions of 2 memos that were first released under the Biden administration a little bit more than a year ago. I will drop links to the old versions. These are not the ones currently in place, but if folks are curious to look at the old versions, here they are. Both of these are required under 2 different federal laws. And basically what they are is the first one is a memo to all federal agencies that lays out requirements about the use and governance of AI tools by federal agencies. The second is basically the sister or companion memo to that that tells agencies how they're supposed to achieve these objectives through the procurement process. What's important about these at the federal level is they are legally binding documents that tell agencies how they can use AI and the kinds of obligations they have to follow when they do. So the updated versions that I'll provide a link to in a second are basically the most recent versions of these initial ones that were issued under the Biden administration.
Awesome. Thank you, Quinn. And so how do you see the most updated guidance change from the previous AI guidance that was given?
Yeah, absolutely. So these are the links to the current ones. And so it's still stayed in the same form of the first one is the sort of use and governance memo, and the second one is the companion procurement memo. I think one of the key takeaways I want people to walk away from today is that these are largely consistent with the versions issued under the Biden administration. I think some of the key things that have changed, we'll dig into some. No? Okay. But I think the main thing to know here is that this has remained really consistent. And if anything, has just streamlined some core components to make it more easily understandable to the public and to agencies. But core things like governance requirements, interagency collaboration, responsible procurement requirements stayed in there. There may have been some editing or streamlining, but the really big sort of pillar components of this are all there. I'll talk about one of the important changes in a moment when we dig into the weeds, but that's kind of one of the key takeaways I want folks to pay attention to here is that we're seeing a lot of consistency at the federal level in terms of the expectations being set for public agencies.
Awesome. I think that's good to know that these have remained consistent. Maybe in the weeds, there's a little couple changes. And Quinn, would you like to dive a little bit deeper about the impacts and benefits of these changes?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk through basically, I would say like the kind of three core things that I think are important to take away from what are in the memos and that are similar to the previous versions, that folks on the call might be thinking about in terms of the context you work in as well. There's other stuff in there that I'm happy to talk about, but three things to pay attention to. The first is around intra and interagency AI governance. So the updated memos require various practices within and between agencies to promote AI governance. Some of these things include appointing chief AI officers, establishing AI governance boards. So these are boards within an agency made up of people like privacy, civil rights, IT, procurement experts that help agencies make informed and interdisciplinary decisions about AI systems. And then the last piece it also has is an interagency chief AI officer council, right? So every agency has their own chief AI officer, and then there's one central convening place for folks across government to come together and say, here are the use cases we're exploring, here are the challenges, here's how we're implementing this guidance to promote some of that kind of sharing of knowledge and lessons learned throughout the process. So that's the first thing, AI governance sort of structures, basically. The second is the risk management regime it establishes. And this is where one of the changes is put in place. But basically what this does is it says for high-risk systems, agencies have to take additional steps to mitigate risks by putting in place a bunch of different kinds of risk mitigation practices. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but these includes things like pre-deployment testing, ongoing monitoring, human training and oversight, public feedback, those kinds of things. And the way that it does this is in the updated version, it defines a category of systems called high impact AI systems. Essentially, you can think of this as systems that have a meaningful or consequential impact on the public's rights, safety, that kind of thing. So it defines those and it has some sort of predefined high impact categories. Those would include a lot of things you might assume. So like critical infrastructure, law enforcement, access to government services and benefits. And for those systems, it says if it meets this high impact definition, you have to do all of this extra work to make sure that they are safe, rights respecting before they're deployed, and to monitor for any adverse outcomes or risks after they're deployed, and to make sure your staff know how to use them. This is where one of the kind of key changes I would point out for folks to pay attention to is the updated guidance uses one unified category of high impact systems that it defines. The previous guidance issued under the Biden's administration had sort of two categories that made up high risk called safety impacting and rights impacting. So while this is one category, it basically just streamlines those two into one. So this high impact category includes more or less what was previously defined as safety or rights impacting. So the thing I would pay attention to here, if you're in the shoes of someone working at state or local government, is this overall structure. They've found a way to define higher risk systems that need more attention and more time from staff, and then lay out the kind of requirements you should think about fulfilling to make sure that those systems are safe and effective. The very last thing I'll highlight here is that the procurement memo in particular lays out sort of responsible procurement practices. And this really details like what are the kinds of things you want to have in contracts and what are the kinds of things you want to be paying attention throughout the procurement life cycle. So from the kind of planning phase where you're developing the RFP through the kind of performance monitoring phase of contract execution. And so this includes a range of things, saying make sure you have contract terms that an AI system that's high impact is in compliance with all the risk mitigation practices, to things like, make sure you have safeguards for government IP in your contract terms and a way to monitor that and a way to get data back after a contract is over, that kind of thing. So I'd say those are the three most important pillars: governance, risk management practices, and procurement. But there are other things in there too, like having agencies create AI strategies and compliance plans. So there's other kind of more tactical details that are useful to dig into if you're interested. But by and large, those three things have carried over from the past administration. to this administration, um, and has a bunch of details in there that you can dig into if you're trying to think about how would I do this in my jurisdiction.
Yeah, Quinn, thank you so much for outlining the top three changes. And very excited to see that the coalition is also working on very similar things for procurement. So I'll have one last question before we move into any audience questions, and it'll just be, what do you see as meaningful channels for civil society, academia, or the public to influence how agencies can interpret or apply the memos in practice?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I think about this in two ways. If you're thinking about how do I use this in my own context, I would approach this as saying there's because of the consistency here, I think you can kind of view this is a helpful distillation of what the kind of core pillar, what the federal government sees as the core pillars of public sector AI governance. What are the things that you need to make that up? And then essentially for the, local state context, it's providing you with a menu of options about how to do that in practice. So it's saying, for high risk systems, these are the kind of risk management practices federal agencies are putting in place. You can start there if you're thinking about how to adopt your own policies. And my colleague Maddie, who I think is on the call, has done some research into how, state education agencies, cities and counties are looking at this stuff. And a lot of them already cited the Biden era OMB memos in their own policies. So we're already seeing state and locals look to these as resources. And I think the fact that they're so consistent just signals that these can continue to be really helpful resources. The second thing I would just highlight is, part of what these memos require of federal agencies is that they engage with the public for high impact, these high risk systems. So that means there will be ongoing, or there should be ongoing opportunities for the public to engage with federal agencies as they're considering and using high risk systems. I think the real thing that we're all looking for is how this guidance will be implemented in the future. So for folks interested in what the federal government is doing, I think that would be a really important channel to engage with federal agencies to say we're excited about this guidance and we're really looking to learn more about how you're now implementing this stuff on the ground. I'll also add my email in the chat after this so folks can follow up with questions if you have them.
Yeah, no, that would be amazing. I think we have a couple of questions in the chat. I think, let's see, I'll go ahead and pick out a couple of them. So for example, one person did ask, is there an example of a local government agency that would not be considered high risk? And I think that question was from Christine.
Of a local government agency?
Let's say a local government agency use case that would
Use
not be
case.
high risk. Let's
Oh,
we can
sure.
add
Yeah.
that.
So, absolutely. I think, a lot of the kind of administrative support kind of tools. So, say a meeting transcription tool that's just used for internal teams to manage notes, workflows, that kind of thing. Most of the time isn't going to fall into the high risk category or something to help, copy edit reports, but isn't making any kind of final decisions, isn't meaningfully impacting how someone might access government services, also wouldn't fall into the definition. I think the way to think about it is this is creating a forcing function for agencies to do their homework to say, like, is this high risk in the first place? And if you're making that kind of assessment, you're kind of inherently having to go through other steps to think about who is this impacting? How is it impacting them? What kind of oversight and governance do I have in place? I see the one helpful thing to look at is they have the list of presumed high impact. So it kind of gives you some clues about the things that they're viewing as falling into that high impact category.
Yeah, I definitely agree that would be really helpful if you're looking into it, Christine. Just take a look at that list as well. And then we had one very popular question. Is there any guidance or input on the recent 10-year moratorium on state or local enforcement of law or regulation for AI models as part of the HR One Big Beautiful Bill Act?
Sure. So that's separate from the OMB memos. CDT has spoken. I haven't worked on this as much, but CDT as an organization has worked a lot on this. A lot of folks are working hard on the federal moratorium. If folks don't know what that is, the House passed a version of the budget that includes language that would basically pause enforcement of all state AI laws. That's a summary, but more or less what it is. A lot of organizations, including CDT, but also National Conference of State Legislatures, National Association of Attorneys Generals, and several National Association of State Chief Information Officers, several others, have all come out against that, highlighting both how forward-leaning some states have been, as everyone on this call knows, around creating substantive guardrails on the use of AI in different contexts, and the kind of harms this would expose residents to if some of these existing laws were put in place, and how broadly it is drafted, and the broad range of laws that it would likely preempt, including, I would note for this call, probably a lot of laws that have been enacted about public sectors of uses of AI. In some cases, would likely fall into the scope of the moratorium.
Thank you, Gwen. I think that's all the time we have for questions, but thank you again for being here with us today. Super informative. And then we'll again share all the articles you've shared and your email at the end. So if anyone has questions, you guys can contact Gwen to continue that conversation. I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Layla for our committee updates. But yeah, thank you again.
Awesome. Thank you, Angela. And thank you again, Quinn. That was super informative. And I recommend that folks check out the article from CDT that we dropped in the chat that kind of goes into a little more detail all the points that Quinn just shared with us during the Q&A. Okay, so we're going to jump into the committee updates portion of our meeting. If this is your first time at a coalition meeting, this is when we go through each of our 6 committees, and the co-chairs will share the latest on what that committee has been working on. So we can go to the next slide. Perfect. And I'm going to pass it to Meg and Liz to give us updates from the Community Engagement Committee.
Hi, everyone. I am speaking on behalf of my co-chair, Liz, from the city of Salt Lake City today. We have a working group that's new in this phase to help you communicate with residents about the AI that your organization is using, to elicit their input, and to create spaces for meaningful dialogue and even co-design about what the pressing needs are in your community. So every meeting, we will be starting with a case study. This last meeting, we heard from the city of Long Beach. Ryan Kurtzman shared about their incredible collab program where they ask residents what the pressing needs are. And then in the second half of the meeting, we're going to be working on our big idea deliverables, our resources for supporting your organization. And these will go up on the GovAI website. So last time we worked on talking points to help your leadership understand the importance of community engagement. And we'll be creating guides and resources as we go, including AI 101 to communicate with residents about just the nuts and bolts of what AI is and how it works. And probably the most ambitious effort that we're pursuing is a matchmaking program to take interested public agencies and to introduce them to willing academic and civil society partners who can support your capacity to reach out to residents in your community. So if you're interested in that, I'll be putting my email in the chat, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at our next community engagement meeting, which will be in July.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Meg. All right, we're going to move to the next committee, which I believe is procurement. And so I'm going to pass it over to Emily to give us some updates here.
Hey, everybody.
Oh, Emily, you went on mute.
Oh, is that better?
Yeah, you're good now.
Not sure what happened, but hey, everybody. Thanks so much for coming out to the GovAI Coalition meeting today. Just a couple updates from the procurement committee side of things. So we continue to meet regularly. As we announced at the last GovAI Coalition meeting, we have launched our first shareable contract initiative with the city of San Jose. They are acting as the lead agency on an AI-powered digital twin multi-package procurement. We're in the process of building the evaluation criteria for that and the scope for that in partnership with both our committee as well as civil society members that are part of the GovAI Coalition. If you would like to give us some feedback about what would make a shareable contract most useful for you, we do have a link to the survey in the PowerPoint and going out with the meeting notes. And it's a quick survey, and you can give us a lot of information to make sure that we are building a contract that is as universally acceptable and adoptable as possible. We're excited about building off of this work towards our vision of pooling our purchasing power as a coalition to be able to incentivize companies to adopt responsible AI practices and build use cases and procurement vehicles that support the needs of our membership. We also continue to track and iterate our contract hub that is built in partnership with Pavilion. I don't yet have the numbers for April and May from Pavilion, but I'll get those and report those out at the next meeting. But our engagements were at 283 folks logged on to the hub in March. And we continue to add shareable contracts for AI procurements in the public sector onto that hub. So please continue to check and access the GovAI contract hub. It's open to GovAI members. If you are registered as a member, you have access to the hub automatically. And then our working group continues to build a workflow for how we're going to curate all the contracts that we find for AI systems that are out there and make sure that we are showcasing best-in-class contracts on our hub. I think that's about it for our team. Thanks so much.
That's it, Emily. Just kidding. Procurement committee has been super busy lately. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, next is over to the Readiness and Adoption Committee. So I think I'm going to pass it to Rich and Sahar for updates.
Thanks so much, Layla. As everyone can see, we have a variety of very exciting sector-specific training topics on our roadmap that are in various stages of development. And just to point out that not only are we focusing on developing out this content, but we're seeking to collaborate with established partners in the extended public sector community while building these topics out. These partners have been helping us brainstorm and build content to garner maximum impact. Some examples are Center for Democracy and Technology. Quinn is helping us with the policy piece, and other entities and agencies that we want to partner with to expand awareness and grow the program. In some cases, we are exploring co-branding and co-sponsoring content once it's rolled out. So just want to give a thanks to our growing list of partners who are contributing to our work. Wanted to turn this over really briefly to Sahar to talk about the one-on-one adoption support.
Thank you, Rich. Hi, everybody. I am Sahar Noor, and I am assisting in this Readiness and Adoption Committee. And I've been working with folks who want any help and support in getting started. I've had conversations with various folks from different agencies, and you can reach out to me if you are overwhelmed with a lot of information or looking for any specific, help or support or questions, or in adopting a policy or policy manual, or even navigating this whole thing with the resources available from the coalition. And I'll drop my email in the chat, and you can book time with me and I can help support in that. Any questions?
Folks, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and Rich and Sahar can field them. But if you're new to the coalition, I can't recommend enough joining this committee. It's a great place to get plugged in and started with all the resources. And you should definitely take advantage of those one-on-one office hours that Sahar is offering. She's very adept at navigating all of the coalition's templates and starting to do AI governance. So huge shout out there. Okay.
Great. And just, do you want me to cover the last two bullets here?
Oh, yes, please. Yeah. Sorry, Rich, go ahead.
That's okay. Just, one of our committee's objectives and key results centers around preparing and making available a quarterly introductory webinar. This is letting us turn our education efforts inward towards the coalition to serve as a guide for new members, to point them to resources at the coalition and provide some instruction on what our various committees do and how they can get involved. And Sahar and I are brainstorming content as a first step towards developing that out. And last, we are working with the public sector network to provide an online training hub that will host all of our training content. And we are in the stages of finalizing that layout of that space to position our training so that they can easily be accessed. And once we get that space finalized, we'll introduce that resource to the larger coalition. So those are the last few bullets there.
Wow. Thank you both so much. This is amazing work. Appreciate it. Okay, so we're going to keep it moving. Next is Use Cases Committee, I believe. Yes, awesome. So Nicole and Hemant, if you're on the call, I'll pass it to you.
Thank you, Layla. Hi, everyone.
Oh.
Nicole and Heaven aren't here today, so I will be filling in for them. Hi, I'm Jamie Wascalis, Chief Information Officer of the City of St. Paul and Use Cases Committee Board Chair. The Use Cases Committee is really focused on two areas right now: developing use cases and demoing use cases. So it's about building together and it's about sharing and learning. Before I talk about these upcoming meetings, I just really quickly want to highlight some pieces from the monthly development meeting that we had last week. So some of the things that we talked about include, we saw a demo of San Jose's regulation tracker. This was built on North Dakota State University System Legislation Tracker. If any of you were able to see that last year at the summit, or if you've seen it during our use cases session. And essentially, we had a really great conversation because it was a really lightweight way to build a tracker, and it got us talking about ideas of using GPTs paired with APIs. So a lot of great use cases and energy there. We also had a continued discussion about translation use cases. That work group has been going strong for a long time, and we're kind of looking at narrowing down what should we really be focused on there. Some more to come there. But I think the real energy was around permitting and how AI vendors and platforms could positively impact economic development by making these processes easier for all of us. We're going to be exploring permitting a lot over the next couple of months. So if you're interested, please join us. So that leads me to our upcoming meetings. We meet twice a month. One is fully a demo session to come and learn. One is about development and what we're doing to develop use cases together. So our next meeting, June 3rd, is our use case demo session. Nicole will be leading that. If you're interested in learning about an AI-powered CRM, if you want to learn how to up your bias check game, or if you're interested in learning about incorporating AI into data breach analysis, we have people coming to talk, both vendors and the public sector, to come talk to us about those areas. So we encourage you all to join us. I'll put a link in the chat when I'm done here. Also, our normal use cases development meeting will be coming up next month on June 17th. And like I said, we're really looking at permitting right now. And so we're going to call that a use case deep dive session, where we're going to talk about permitting with you all. So if you're a public sector organization and you're implementing or exploring an AI platform or uses of AI to help with the permitting process, I would love to hear from you. Please email me. I'll put my information in the chat. Really excited about this work and wanting to really make a difference in the economic development possibilities for our regions by working together. So thank you all so much for those of you who are supporting us. And if you haven't supported us, or if you haven't joined any of our meetings, come on over. We're really fun and we're doing some great work. Thanks, y'all.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jamie. Okay, next is the Industry Relations Committee. So I'll pass it to Tegan and Yar.
Yep, thanks. And hey, everybody, my name is Tegan Trammell. I work with the city of Sugar Land, Texas. I'm one of the lucky guys that gets to serve as a co-chair for this awesome Industry Relations Committee alongside Yar and Ethan of TriMet. As always, shout out to Angela, our awesome committee facilitator. But I'm super happy to say that this committee has really hit the ground running for phase 3 and trying to focus on our 2 objectives. So our first objective has been to improve our AI registry. If you don't know, that's where all of our AI fact sheets are housed. So we're actually working with Hortus AI to make an all-in-one AI registry, make it basically like a marketplace. And that is, as you can see, in progress. And right now we're just making sure that Hortus's registry is going to meet all the requirements that both our vendors and our agencies need. And then our second objective is to define the coalition's relationship with our vendor community. We're also making great progress on that. We actually sent out a survey to our committee and got our survey results back. So I'll do a quick little overview of those survey results. So our vendors have said that they want more feedback from our agencies, specifically on their AI fact sheets. And then secondly, they want more introductions to our decision makers. And obviously vendors want introduction to decision makers to actually sell their product a little bit more. And that's something that we think as a committee, we can help facilitate and make sure that our vendors are getting that value add as being a member of our coalition and our committee. And then also they just want a more streamlined registry, and that's exactly what we're partnering with Fortis to provide. And then on the part of our agencies, they've asked for regularly updated fact sheets. As we all know, AI is changing every day, and that means that our vendors and their products are changing every day. And so they want the fact sheets to reflect that. And that's something, again, that Hortus is making sure is involved with our new registry. And additionally, Hortus is making sure that agencies are going to be able to see side-by-side comparisons of fact sheets and vendor products on this new registry. And then lastly, as always, agencies just want continued guidance on compliance standards for everything AI related. So if any of this sounds interesting to you, I would like to invite you out to our committee meetings. We meet roughly twice a month. That's every other Friday. Actually, this Friday, May 30th at about 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, we're going to have our vendor office hours. This is just a time where we allow vendors that have submitted a fact sheet or want to submit an AI fact sheet to come and ask questions to make sure that we do get your fact sheet put on our registry. So again, that's May 30th, this Friday. And then 2 weeks from this Friday on June 13th, we're going to have our next agency discussion where we're going to continue working on the objectives that I talked about today. And so that's about all I have. I know Ethan Benetton, you were on the call, so I want to give you an opportunity to talk about anything I missed today.
Can't think of anything I would add. Thank you so much, Tegan.
Thanks.
Awesome. Great work, Industry Relations Committee. Thanks so much for that update. All right. Okay, and last but certainly not least is the Data Governance Committee. So I'll pass it to Artie and Sarah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Arti Tangri, City of San Jose, and leading the Data Governance Committee with Sarah from Seattle. We had a very productive meeting this past month. We finalized to really focus on just the data sharing agreement to begin with. The data governance can be a pretty large scope, and we wanted to just focus in and get something done. So we started out with the Texas State test deck as our template. And last meeting, we had live feedback from the members of the committee, and we decided to focus on the following options that I've listed out here. So we will be, the following considerations were taken, which we'll be going back and working on the template and adding to the template. So the items that we are considering are having more language around internal versus external sharing. A lot of members shared that there are issues with internal sharing as well, and our focus had only been external sharing. So we'll be adding language around internal as well. There was an interest in adding more data lexicon and adding more information around classification. So probably like an add-on to the agreement document on defining some of those data terminologies and the classifications. And then also talking about, scenarios where vendors will be collecting data. How do we accommodate that language in the data sharing agreement so that it's really planned in advance when we do the agreement? Also, we discussed what are some of the prohibited uses of data. As we work through the agreement, it's important to get those also into the agreement. So having to think through that initially is important. And then the data used after the termination of agreement, that is something that was also brought up that we need to also bring into the template document. And then also referencing some of the data sharing standards like NEEM. So we'll be going through some of those and seeing how we can bring those standards in. So the standards apply to the general data sharing agreement between the two parties. And if you're interested in providing feedback on this document, please, it's linked on the slide here. It's also been shared in the chat. So please provide inputs directly in the document, and we'll be having the next meeting on June 16th. And I do see Sarah is on the call. Sarah, if you have anything else to add, please chime in.
Thank you. Already know, I think that's definitely it. Open to any and all feedback. We want to make this the most useful deliverable it can be, because we know data sharing is super, super important, which is kind of why we chose to focus on it out of the gate. And thank you for covering it. I was tardy to the party today, so I appreciate you stepping in for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Artie and Sarah. Folks, if you're able to provide feedback on that data sharing template, please do. There's a link to do just that in the chat. All right, so I think that brings us to the end of our committee updates. Really, really incredible work that's happening in every committee right now. So if you've contributed to that work in any way, thank you so much. Albert, I'm going to pass it back to you to close us out.
So thank you, Layla. And thank you, everyone, for taking the time today on a very busy Wednesday for all of us. Look, that's the end of our meeting. I want to thank everyone for joining. For those who have questions, things that they just want to talk about, I'm going to stay on for the next 5 minutes just to play any tech support or if you have any questions. But for all intents and purposes, this is the end of the meeting. I'm going to stop the recording. And I hope you all have a lovely rest of your week. Take care.